with it. You should all get a message now saying you are now recording, so please don't swear. They used to say that I'm the big brother of the house, didn't they? Show my age.
So, hi everybody, I'm Marie Jenkins from Entrepreneurial Wellbeing, and welcome to our second season of The Secret Diary of Marie Jenkins 47 Plus. Now, today I'm super excited to welcome two new guest panelists who are both entrepreneurial in their own right. So first of all, we've got David Bozward from the Royal Agricultural University. How are you, David?
Hi there, Maria. It's great to be on the call, and as always, when you agree to do these things, it soon pops up into the diary, doesn't it? So really looking forward to having a chat today.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. And then the other lovely person I've got with us today is Louise Roberts from Alimenti Food Science. Hi, Louise.
Hi, Marie. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Very welcome.
So, before I launch into today's topics for Education Week, I want to just do a quick introduction. So David and I met when I enrolled on my entrepreneurship degree at the University of Worcester back in 2016.
Yeah.
So David Bozward is a serial tech entrepreneur. He's an educator, a researcher, and an authority on international youth entrepreneurship, which I can absolutely attest to. And he's been in education for over 20 years. So he's got a whole wealth of entrepreneurial business experience. So over the last 10 years, he has successfully created and delivered enterprise and entrepreneurship education through a number of government universities, and Worcester being one. He has designed and delivered a broad range of extracurricular entrepreneurship interventions, and that's in elective modules and venture creation degree programs. Is that right?
Yeah, VCPs.
And he's currently the head of entrepreneurship at the Royal Agricultural University. I think that's pretty impressive, David.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for reading all that out.
Well, it just shows what a wealth of knowledge you've got within the education sector and entrepreneurship. So hopefully we'll touch
I think it also shows I get bored easily. So that's an entrepreneurial trait, I guess.
Or it's that you've got that thirst for knowledge.
Very much so.
Fantastic. So Louise is a microbiologist, and she helps professionals take the stress out of managing food safety. And HACCP, what does that mean, Louise?
Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. It's a risk assessment system that they use in the food industry.
Ah, okay. Okay, so that's all new learning for me. And you give customers the time to create amazing products which are safe, legal, and the quality agreed with the customer's specialities. Yeah. But you've got lots of other things that you do as well. So you do food safety management systems, food hygiene, rapid hygiene assessments, supply chain assessments. You're an author?
Yeah, I wrote a book. Well, I wrote a chapter of a book for 3M.
Fantastic, fantastic. So that's new. You're a speaker.
Yeah.
You also are part of a networking group as well.
That's right, yeah. Gloucester Business Women's Networking Group, yeah.
Fantastic. And also, I've got the pleasure of working with you as an enterprise advisor at Ridgeway Academy in Aswood Bank Ready.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a bit of a newbie, but yeah, it's great.
Fantastic. So hopefully you'll be inspiring the next generation of people to go into microbiology.
Hopefully, yeah, that's the plan.
Fantastic. So let's move on to today's topic, which is future for the curriculum. So I'd love to hear your views on where you think the curriculum have got things right and where we could potentially tweak things and change it for the better for the next generation. David, I'm going to come to you first.
Oh, where do we start? I think, let's be honest, we've got an education system that was designed a few hundred years ago now, and we see young people at 3 or 4 years old who can use an iPad and browse the internet and have the entire global knowledge bank at their fingertips. And on the other side, we've got people coming into school at 4 years old who can barely read and write and can barely speak. And the education system needs to adapt to provide pathways for all of that. But I'm going to focus most of my energy on the universities, because I think we still, as a university, try and put everybody down the same set of degrees. We still expect people to come in, spend 3 years with us, leave, and in those 3 years they come in September, they leave in May, and we have this very old-fashioned system. So one of the first things I think is going to be the trend is that we're going to design education for an individual rather than for a cohort or for a group of people. And with technology, we can do that. So, for instance, there's one of the Singaporean universities is running a degree, and you've got some core modules, which are exactly the same as normal. And then you've got the massively online learning environments, the MOOCs, and you can take up to 1,000 courses on these MOOCs. So if you want to know about microbiology, but you're doing a business degree, you can take that credit and you can do that online. But if you wanted to, I don't know, do crowdfunding, microbiology, and I don't know, space exploration, you can put those three things together. And of course, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do until I was about 35 years old. So expecting a 16-year-old to know what they're going to do without that ability to try and test new things, look at new things, and develop their headspace on it, I think is what the one change that I think we really have. And in education terms, we are looking at what they call microcredits, i.e. small amounts of credit. So you can, you know, you still might be still having the bulk of your degree. You know, you did an entrepreneurship degree, so maybe 50 or 60% of the credits that you do, it will be entrepreneurship, but then the other 40% you could look at lots of other things and to sort of round out your personality and your knowledge base. So I think that's one of the first things that I see changing, because technology allows it, and I think that's the pivot that we're going to see in the future.
I'd agree with you there, David, and I really would welcome that approach from the perspective of people can then choose different things to find out where their interests lie, and then when they're particularly found their right niche for them, then they can go on to sort of specialize more. But it just gives more options for pupils to try different things to see what ignites their passions, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Louise, what's your thoughts on the future for the curriculum? What do you think?
I think we need to engage people more with their food. I think at secondary school particularly, people don't understand where the food comes from. So for me, that's a really key issue for educating our our students, our young people.
I'd agree with you there. I mean, it's been on TV very recently about, you know, children understanding more about where their food comes from, a lot more about growing your own and all of that. I think we've all sort of been planting seeds over lockdown, etc. So, yeah. But what do you mean specifically? In what sort of topics would that cover?
So you could look at the agriculture, you could look at the farming, you could look at food preparation. I bring back the old home economics, I guess, to a degree. So people understand exactly where their food comes from and how they can utilise it to its best effect without ruining it. There's a lot of discussion about ultra processed foods, which, you know, are the bane of the manufacturer's life, apparently. But yeah, the skills as well to be able to produce safe food would be great.
I would probably go one step further and say, for me, it's about transparency. A lot of people don't understand where their food has come from, but what's happened all the way through. And that transparency is important, I think, moving forward, because people, if we can make it transparent, they can engage with it and they can understand it, and then they can make buying decisions based on that transparency. And what we see at the moment is, because these value chains are not transparent, we are, you know, we're still selling products at a cheaper value and manipulating people in other countries, which, you know, we wouldn't work for £1 a day, but we expect a coffee grower or a chocolate grower to do the same, to do that. So you know, that value is not there, it's not transparent all the way through.
Absolutely.
Also,
I agree.
Sorry, Louise.
I was going to say, I agree with David.
Yeah, I'm just thinking from a health and well-being perspective as well. People can make more informed choices, do you think, Louise, if they
Definitely.
understand where their foods come from?
Yeah, if you understand that you need to grow wheat to feed your animals in order to produce beef, for example, then yeah, you can understand your food chain much better. You can understand why it costs the amount of money that it does. That we've been trained to, in this country, to believe that food's cheap, and it isn't.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, as far as what we eat now, we're a lot more savvy on what we consume. But I think it would be really important to learn a bit more about how that particular meal has got to our plate, and what's in it and what's involved in it. And I've been encouraged actually through the whole of the pandemic, because people seem to be cooking more and experimenting and improving their skill set. Are you both cooks yourself?
Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely not.
But I'm sure you've got a good knowledge of where your food comes from, though, David.
Absolutely, and you know, working at the RAU, the Royal Agricultural University, you know, you get to see where food is from, and you get to understand that value proposition from the farmer, wherever they are in the world, all the way through to your plate. And I think, you know, we do need to reduce our meat consumption. We do need to understand that, you know, virtually everything is seasonal. We do need to see that things are slower growth. Things can normally be more sustainable and have better quality. And these are difficult messages to put through. And of course, politicians, bless their little souls, can't seem to get their head into lots of data. So and so therefore it's confusing, both for the consumer and for the politician, because they're not really getting down to the real nitty-gritty of it.
In terms of the Royal Agricultural University, David. I'm interested, have things changed in regard to the pupils learning more about what Louise has said then, in terms of, you know, the whole process? Are things changing in that way?
I wouldn't say for us they are, because I think most of our students are from a farming background, so they do understand what happens on the farm, and whether it be arable or animal, they've been there and done it, and so and it doesn't matter whether we talk about, I don't know, somebody in the Ivory Coast who's a farmer, or somebody in the UK. They're all at the bottom of the food chain, and as with anything, the supermarkets are the biggest entity who make the most profit, and they sometimes, well, most of the time, they squeeze out the profits lower down. But of course, farmers do things for a variety of reasons, not just for money. There's very long hours, it's very dirty, it's very cold, it's, you have one, we had 3 storms in 1 week a few weeks back. And of course, it doesn't matter what you're growing or where you are, you've got a lot of issues of trying to keep the roof on the barn, keep the cows happy, and make sure your wheat continues to grow. So, nature can be harsh, and there's nothing you can do to control it.
It's definitely a lifestyle choice, definitely. But that's interesting. So we've got 2 different perspectives on the future of the curriculum. David, in terms of being more flexible in our learning, I think, would you say that's sort of a good approach to take?
I wouldn't necessarily say flexible, but I think we will get down to a curriculum that is designed for one person. So you're not going to a university or even a secondary school. I can remember at secondary school, and they said you can take these options or you could take those options, but you couldn't take that one and that one. And we've all been there when we try and take our GCSEs or A levels, and they say you can only do this and this. And let's be honest, with technology and the way we can design curriculums now, we can make it a curriculum of one person. And we can design, and one of the things I think is also important here, I'm not advocating everything's online. I think there's a balance to be had between that physical connection that you have with your educator and the other students, and having things which are online. And I think that comes back to the well-being. Personally, I don't enjoy sitting there talking at a screen for hours on end. It doesn't please me at all.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a balance between that physical and that online. The online's easy because you can record it, you can send it out there, people can digest it over and over again. They can watch it at 1 o'clock in the night, they can do their coursework at 2 o'clock, which, let's be honest, as students, that's the way people work. So there's advantages to that, but there's also disadvantages, and it's that balance that as an educator we need to make sure we're going to give you lots of choice, but some of it's going to be based on a physical in a classroom, and some of it's based on an online learning environment, and that's the balance that needs to be had. And I think COVID allows us to test things out which we would never really could have done before. And
yeah, I'd agree. So talking about well-being, David, I'm interested, like you're saying about pupils being able to work at whenever they want to, accessing materials online, etc. But in terms of wellbeing provision, what sorts of things are happening in your education setting?
We're quite a small university in the middle of the countryside, so it's only recently that we stopped students bringing their dogs to class. And we still have, I still have students who bring their dogs, and that's part of where we are. So being in a rural location, I think is better. People have better well-being, and you know, we had a project with a guy a few years ago who looked at ex-military people and the fact that it's better for them to go into the countryside after they come out of the forces, because there's a better well-being, there's better, it allows them to have that space that, and funny enough, this is exactly what happened after the First World War, so it's nothing new. Yeah, so after the First World War, they put people on the farms because it was, you know, it was a great place for them to sort of get that well-being, get that space, get that both physical and mental space ready. But so I think generally the rural aspect helps us, but of course we do have a whole series of student services set up for students that are having issues, and that is, you know, the RAU is no different to every other university that you probably go to. But I think for us, our uniqueness is, you know, we literally are in the middle of the country. So if you're feeling a bit grubby, and then you can you know, choose a path from one of these, and you can go for a walk for a few hours, and you know, it's a beautiful countryside, and come back and hopefully you feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to simplify things but sometimes I think that headspace is what people want.
Yeah, and there's so much research that has gone into the healing properties of being in nature. So I completely agree with you there, David. Have you seen it, the importance around well-being significantly increasing, would you say, or is it pretty much the same?
I got to, because we have students who are from a rural background, they tend to be a little bit more resilient than those from a city, because most of them have had to drive places. They, you know, that's what you have to do. You know, as I said, the weather is there. You know, if you have a storm in the middle of London, you can still go in the underground and you still get from A to B. And when you come out, you're going to have going to get a couple of minutes in the rain, and then you're back into another building. But if you're in a rural environment, you are really in the storm, aren't you? And so that builds resilience. And what we tend to find is that our students are a little bit more resilient than others. Doesn't stop them having a bit of a wobble every now and again, but I think typically that's where their sort of their grounding is. That's where their sort of their point of axis. And I think that generally, again, that nature's a great way of helping people.
I agree. Louise, I want to bring you in here. So what's your view about wellbeing provision in schools, and, you know, where you think they should be going in terms of that?
I think it's quite interesting that wellbeing tends to be described as mental health these days rather than physical health as well. Obviously, schools have been dealing with for a long time. The dreaded PE lessons that I was at school were awful. You know, you didn't get picked for the team, then you were just left on the sidelines, really. So yeah, no, I think that the schools could do more to help with their students' mental well-being. They've obviously all got their pastoral care set up, secondary school, but I don't know about primary school, what they can support pupils with. This is not just the secondary schools where people are having mental health issues. So yeah, could do more, I think, could do better. That's the mark I give them.
Yeah. And just linking it in with what you were saying earlier about knowing where your food comes from. What I've noticed is there's more of a trend towards children having allotments in schools and things like that. So, and that's good for both your mental well-being and your physical health, because you're out gardening, you're doing activity, learning about food.
And you're more likely to eat the food if you've grown it yourself as well, aren't you?
absolutely. Well, you take pride in what you produce, and
Yep.
there's something lovely about having your own produce that you've grown yourself. So yeah, I totally agree.
As David was saying earlier, I think you learn more about the seasonality of food as well. Can't have strawberries in December in most places in the UK, so yeah.
One of the stats I always like to remind people is 47 million tons of food is wasted every year that's actually on a farm. That doesn't even leave the farm gate. So, you know, if you go the fields around where we are in Worcestershire, you go on a farm that's producing, let's say, courgettes, you know, if it's just a little centimetre wonky, guess what? It just gets left on the field. And so even if we could educate people to buy a slightly wonky courgette, you know, we might get down to 46 million tons. And that's the thing that we're really trying to get people to understand is, you know, it still tastes the same. It might be slightly different. And that's only through growing it and understanding the process that hopefully we can get to that point. Because we're wasting money, we're wasting nature, we're wasting so much. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's there's a lot of people out there that could benefit as well. And if it's just sitting there in the field, then you know we need to get a lot better at that. So yeah, I'd agree. Really interesting. I'm sorry, our 30 minutes are up already. It's really good actually, because what Louise does very much complements, you know, the whole food supply chain perspective from farmers through to what we eat and where our food comes from. Educating ourselves on how we could potentially learn more and improve our well-being. So thank you so much both for coming on today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And what I'll do is I'll put all the details in our show notes. So if you want to reach out to Louise Roberts at Alimenti Food Science or David Bozward at the Royal Agricultural University, you'll be able to do so. So thank you both and enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.